Hello, Mage fans, and welcome to Mage the podcast that works hard towards ascension, so you don't have to. I'm your host, Adam, and today I'm bringing you a community roundup. The Mage fans in our community have been working on a number of interesting projects. I'm highlighting 3 today that I think are worth hearing about. First, we'll talk with Stefan Carton about the Mage 20 system reference document. Next up is Mark Hope and David Lewis and the Book of Common Magicks. Finally, we'll hear from Lee Webb, who is writing the Darkness Over Dallas series. Now I turn to the segment that has a number of Mage fans excited, the Mage 20 SRD. SRD is System Reference Document. That means a document that explains the rule systems for a role-playing game. In this case, we have a Word document that lays out the rules for Mage 20. This was prepared by a team of Mage fans. I have Stefan here with me, speaking for the team. How are you today, Stefan?
Doing well in this freezing Australian winter, and thanks for having me on the podcast. It's a little crazy to be on the other side.
Yeah, well, on this side, we are in summer and it is quite hot outside. So I always thought of Australia as being a hot place. I'm just going to have to picture it as being cold today. Stefan is joining us from Melbourne, Australia. The Mage fan community is international. I haven't seen Australia. Stefan, are the internet memes true? Is Australia really trying to kill its residents?
Look, it certainly has its moments, that's for sure, whether it's the blistering heat or freezing cold winter and the different animals. But thankfully, they're mostly friendly.
Now, you didn't start this Mage 20 SRD project. Tell me who did.
Back when Terry started this in 2021, he'd really only been in the podcast for a year or two by his own account, and he kept seeing the same sort of basic questions coming up about the system. It doesn't help that every game line has slightly tweaked rules, but still kind of calls it the storyteller system. So I think this was his first attempt to build something a bit more accessible. Of course, he'd go on and run the Wiki Update project and try at Con to bring more people into the game, but this feels like the most comprehensive attempt to date.
How big is your team? Are there any assigned roles?
Since I've really taken over from Terry, we've had about 4 major contributors and nearly a dozen reviewers and editors that have been able to contribute, which is fantastic. It's an entirely volunteer effort, so nothing formal, and we're always looking for more people to review and contribute. More perspectives, the better.
Were there a division of topics? Was there like a person who's looking at the big picture and then another person who's looking at the umbra and another person who's looking at spheres?
Yeah, certainly. A lot of people have done their own bits and pieces of work privately. We're very lucky to have folks like Kevin Fitzpatrick, who's done a massive amount of effort on the Wonders system. Chartan has been fantastic in terms of doing a lot of research and putting together his view of the spheres throughout the lifetime of Mage. So there's been lots of different people who've kind of come in with their speciality to help guide the project.
Yeah, I talked with Kevin Fitzpatrick about his work on Wonders. I'm so glad you hooked up with him. I keep thinking it's a PDF because I'm used to my RPGs being PDF files, but that's not actually the case, is it? What format is this now?
At the moment, we're drafting it all in just Google Docs because it's a nice way to get as many contributors as possible who can access, add comments. It makes it a lot easier for us drafting. But eventually it'll be moved to a Storyteller Vault style PDF and publication.
Oh, okay. So I'm just looking ahead. Well, that's good to hear because, the PDF format has been very versatile for me for using my RPG books in different forms. So I'm glad you're headed in that direction. But I would certainly agree the Google Docs format is a very open, friendly format for contributing and collaborating with a number of people. This document gives us the rules of Mage 20, but I've already got the Mage 20 rulebook. Why do I need this?
Whilst I'm a big fan of the 690-ish page tome, clarity and ease of reading is not its strong suit. Sometimes you need a quick answer, and parts are distributed around the book and interwoven with prose. Don't get me wrong, love the writing, but as a long-time listener with fears of running my own game, having a tool on hand, beyond the storyteller screen of course, helps potential storytellers feel a bit more comfortable, helps adjudicate some of those rules for more experienced storytellers, who might need a refresher on the kind of rules they don't encounter often, like mages becoming Gould.
That's a good point. It doesn't happen every day, but if that happened in my game, yeah, I might feel a moment of panic myself. You're already selling me on this. The Mage 20 book is quite heavy. I have to agree with you on that. Also, when I look things up, there's so much extra text to wade through it. I call it chatter. In parts, I learn more about the author's personal opinions than about Mage rules. Also, I used to not worry about wear on my RPG books. I didn't want to be fussy, but now I've got a number of books that are more than 20 years old and out of print. Caring for RPG books has become a practical matter for me. So how much work is a project like this?
It's a lot of effort. Thankfully, we've been finding people who've made similar products and tools for their own home games, which has been fantastic in terms of cutting back the work. From there, it's a case of kind of cross-referencing and validating, and then getting it compacted into the SRD itself. Something like the merits and flaws summary took about a week straight. the spheres and drafting up the magic rules was a good 2 weeks, especially with the multiple interpretations, even within M20 between how do you do that and the M20 core book.
I have heard some fans discuss that. It is so nice to have someone really go through that with a careful eye and just sort of make sense of it, work out the errata, put it in one presentable form. So I certainly appreciate the efforts your team has done there. Is the document complete?
At last count, time of talking, we're at about 190 pages and 55,000 words. So, and it still needs a fair bit of work cataloging the Umbra and Spirits, for example. Every so often we discover something we've missed, like defining damage types, which I could have sworn Terrier Eye had written and realized about a few days ago that we'd missed. Hence, we welcome anyone to come and have a look, provide their comments, and make sure it's the best version it can be. This covers M20 core with bits of Book of Secrets, so you still want your collection for anything esoteric.
I see. So it may not be 100% complete, but it sounds like it's game ready. Like if someone comes after hearing this and I was like, well, I'm curious, let me try this. It is ready for them to actually use in a game.
Definitely. Dive in, give it a shot, tell us where things are wrong or if we've mixed something up. If there's anything missing that you desperately need, we'll dive in on it.
That sounds awesome. So have you or your team members used it in games? If so, what difference did you notice?
Personally, as someone terrified to run a game, I'm yet to bring it to the table. But we've had some pretty positive feedback, in particularly with the quick reference sheets that we tried to include in the appendix, just to give people a faster way to search through the document. And M20 often puts the rules in 2 or more spots, so it really helps to kind of consolidate things in a nice, accessible table of contents formatted form.
It's so encouraging to hear that you're getting feedback from people. You're encouraging people to try it out. You're really standing behind your work, and that's what gives me confidence to give this a try. Well, I looked through the file last night, and I am impressed. I really appreciate what your team has done. My only request is some attention to layout. I think a layout person could really help a project like this when it finally is ready to go to the PDF stage. For example, larger, bold headings for calling out sections, better tables for organizing some of the information. In my experience, old school Essentials by Gavin Norman has very effective layout tricks a person can learn from, but there are a variety of RPG books out now with great layout. I recommend this not for visual appeal, not for making it look better, but because good layout quickly draws the eye to key points. And when people are looking for information in a hurry, you want to do everything to help them out. So what did you learn working on this project? Do you look at Mage 20 differently now?
Getting a hand for the layout is definitely on the cards once we get the content complete. I'd love some quick access tabs or something along the sides so you could easily switch between chapters. But on to the learnings. The research has been definitely interesting, that it reminds you of all the mechanical story hooks that are in the book. Merits and flaws give you a great way for your players to opt in to troubles that they want to experience and build out interesting storing seeds with prompts and suggested mechanics. There are just some modern game master techniques, like common sense merit, permitting the storyteller to say, "Are you sure?" when you do something a bit questionable, to the unnatural vibes of the echoes and strangeness flaws. Not everything's been handled sensitively within the books. And this is also a pretty good chance for us to flag flaws that deal with some real-world conditions, like the poorly named derangements, or the factually incorrect OCPD flaws. But getting to dive into the spheres and be reminded of all of the variety of effects you can pull off is great. And we're already getting some of that kind feedback on how we can make it useful. In terms of some of the other reflections on M20, not to get too preachy, but as definitely not an author, it's worth having compassion for the writers and the designers on this. M20 can be really difficult to read in spots, and there's some challenges, but it didn't feel like they were set up for success when it came to the consistency of reviewing a lot of these different game lines. It's a lot of work to get from researching multiple complex editions down to the final words on the page. And I know we've had to refer back to, for example, Mage Revised, because dexterity penalty for armors isn't explained in M20. The only place you can really get that answer is going back to Revised. So there's a few bits and pieces that, they slip through the cracks. Onyx Path and the writers did their best with the limited project management, editorial support, time, page count, and money that they had on hand. They're not the biggest megacorp in the TTRPG space, and the world could use more empathy. So it's been a good reflection on that front.
Well, you make me feel bad after all those tomes of Magic episodes where I got my remarks in, but still, from my point of view, after doing all of those episodes and combing through all of these different Mage books that have come out over the years, it is so nice to talk to someone who is understanding the sort of things that we've been talking about on the podcast. You are not only going over the Mage book and saying, let's present these rules well, but let's look at where are there gaps, and when we find these gaps, where can we find the answers? Sometimes they are in an older book. Sometimes they are outside even the RPG space. For example, naming some of the mental afflictions that characters can suffer from. Sometimes, just a little bit of research, a little bit of learning goes a long way. And I'm so glad your team is bringing that to this game. It's really going to benefit all of us. With what you now know, what's your advice to Mage fans? Is there some part of the rules that get overlooked, some tricks you recommend, or some pain you want to help people avoid?
It's a really tough question. Despite working on a big rules compendium, I'm no rules purist. The best rules are the ones that help you and your players engage in a good story together. There's a lot of easily overlooked maneuvers, for example, in the combat section. The complexities of wonder creation, I very vastly underestimated how deep a system that was presented in Book of Secrets, and the messiness of, aptly named busting stuff. Because who can remember object durability ratings, which is soak, and structural ratings, which is effectively health?
Yeah, I remember myself reading through that part of the Mage 20 rulebook and thinking, I don't think I'm getting this. I don't think I'm retaining this. What are you considering for the future? Maybe storyteller screen inserts, perhaps something else?
As mentioned, once we kind of wrap the Umbra and Spirit section, it'll likely go into layout. In the meantime, I'm working on the parts of the SRD and trying to compress them into these quick reference sheets for further reference. We're really proud of the combat sheet, along with the 4-page Magic quick reference guide. It includes all 9 spheres at all the ranks, along with the final page, effectively covering the modifiers and guidance for walking a character through casting their first sphere effect. I'm sure there'll be no shortage of changes required as people scale the document, either in draft or its final STV copy, so I'll be keeping an eye out on that.
As I get more and more into the games that I've been running, I am becoming a real fan of the custom Game Master screens you can purchase from some companies. It's basically a solid color fold-out affair that stands up like a storyteller screen, but it has empty pockets that you can slip pieces of paper into. And it sounds like your team is already anticipating that with these reference sheets. Sounds like I could slip a few of those on both sides of my Game Master screen. Some of it player facing, some of it facing the storyteller. So it's so nice to hear that. Well, my advice to Mage fans is get your copy of the Mage 20 SRD and give it a try. Some of us print our PDFs with lulu.com for use at the table, but what I really recommend is FedEx Kinko's in the United States will print your PDF and spiral bind it for you. No matter what page you're on, it will lay flat on the table. It's been a game changer for me. Well, Stefan, anything more you'd like to share with us before we sign off?
Again, if I haven't said enough, we welcome any and all input to make this a more valuable tool for everyone. The link is in Discord, in the Terry Makes an SRD chat. And just an immense thank you to the team that helped put this together. Chartan for the spheres and combat maneuver research, J did a mammoth effort trying to get all of the merits and flaws in from Book of Secrets, Kevin Fitzpatrick with all the wonders research, and of course the original inspiration to change reality, the late great Terry Robinson for his original 77 pages. It's an absolute pleasure to carry this to completion in his honour. It's just a shame that he couldn't have been here to see it. And of course, a big thank you to yourself, Adam, Joseph, Joss, Puka, Bryce, and all the rest of the Mage podcast team for growing the community.
Well, we do what we can, but I couldn't agree with your sentiments more. Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for the work your team has done on this project. This is the kind of thing more people should be using.
Thank you very much.
In this segment of Community Roundup, I'm talking today with both authors of the Book of Common Magicks, Mark Hope and David Lewis. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello. Hi, Adam. Thanks for having us on the show.
Those of you listeners who checked out this podcast's earliest episodes might remember Mark Hope. At the beginning, I started with Mark. I didn't have any idea what to do, but Mark told me, don't worry, this will be great. I still appreciate that. So, Mark, David, can you tell the listeners how you started with Mage the Ascension?
Yeah, I remember that first couple of episodes. Adam, that was an awful lot of fun. Yeah, for me, it was an advert, an 8-page pamphlet that was in Dragon magazine listing all the traditions, and I kept reading it over and over again, trying to imagine which one of these weird character types I'd play. I found the game, read it on a single ferry journey back from the UK to Netherlands, and just fell in love. It was first edition softback, like a month or so after it came out, and I haven't looked back since. Yeah, May just love the game to bits.
And David?
Myself, I actually came very late to the game, so everything had more or less kind of finished, and I was starting out with like 3.5 D&D. This was about the time that 4th came out. But somebody said just wanted to run a Mage game. I had no idea what it was, and so they lent me their revised edition book for a while, and I pretty much just went through it cover to cover from the start, just kind of lapping it up as it going. It took a while to understand kind of what it was doing, but considering the only other exposure to systems at the time for Magic was what D&D was doing, it seemed revolutionary, even though, again, I was kind of like coming at it from a rather, yeah, we're finished with this, we're moving on to a Waking now sort of like attitude within the production pipeline.
Well, we're talking today about the Book of Common Magicks. This is available on Storyteller's Vault for just $8 in the US. It is 116 pages and offers 12 chapters with appendix and index to help people understand the sphere system in Mage's rules. How do you do that is 136 pages of sphere information. What are you adding to that, and how is Book of Common Magicks different?
In a way, we're kind of going back to an approach that was common in earlier editions of Mage, where you present very basic single sphere sample effects, the building blocks, as it were. So in a way, we're actually taking away from how do you do that, cutting away everything but that. So only the bare bones, the skeleton of the system is left exposed, and you can then build that into whatever Frankenstein creation your imagination desires.
As far as I was concerned, I feel like the biggest problem with the way that M20 presents it is it tells you what, but it doesn't really explain why or how. And for me, at least, one of the biggest draws for the system was how you could actually understand the underlying metaphysics that were going on in how the effects worked, particularly in which rules they kind of employed, whether difficulties are increasing or whether other things were kind of going on. And I felt that having an understanding of that, to the extent exactly what it was, what part of the mechanics were being influenced as you were using these effects, added a whole lot more into understanding what you could reasonably do to create your own effects while still being consistent within the metaphysics.
That was really interesting in the design process. David came up with a lot of ways to connect, in the revision particularly, to connect effects to existing systems within Mage. Like, how can we tie this into the temperature damage system? How can we tie this into the structure point system? Relying upon existing mechanics that were already there in the edition to support the effects themselves. That was really interesting to see.
Something that I thought was quite important was that we want to invent as little as possible for this. We want to tie in as much that's already there, and almost, rather than just telling people what to do, rather signpost people to what's already available in the literature.
Well, that sounds like a great approach. I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate it. With my experience talking with Mage 20 fans and new Mage 20 fans on our Discord server, there have been a number of questions of this part of the rules. Can I just kind of ignore it because I'm not sure about it? And so being able to tie it into the popular sphere system sounds like a great approach. Well, I read large portions of the book to get ready for this. The chapters aren't long. They teach a lot of material in a few pages. I'm impressed by how, in a few places, the book compares 2nd edition, revised edition, and Mage 20 rules to make clear how things are done in Mage 20. This helps Mage fans who remember bits of previous editions but forget that things have changed. The beginning of each chapter, part before rank 1 effects, is incredibly helpful for storytellers and players. Before I get carried away, next question. You said you wrote this for your players. Do they use it? How did it change your games?
For me, at least, it was literally that. The players going, look, we've got the new system. We need that one effect thing from the earlier editions. Can you do a handout? And it sort of went from there. So yeah, my players at least do use it all the time. I'd be quite cross if they didn't.
After all that work.
Right, I know.
Has it changed your games?
So my players have yet to... I don't even know if they're aware of this book yet, or if they're aware that I had anything to do with it. What it has done for me is it's helped me kind of bring all of these things I've had in my mind kind of into an external source. So I could kind of evaluate it such that I'm actually happy that the decisions I've made and how I understand the system actually make sense outside of just kind of subjective understanding while I'm thinking about it internally. So I suppose in many ways it's changed the way that I've approached the game so that I can better explain to my players the decisions I've made and how I think the effects that they're doing would function.
That's a huge thing that I've noticed, actually. I mean, yeah, so I might say, well, this effect has changed slightly because we tweaked it to here or there, fine. But when they go, why? I can explain exactly, well, it's because of this and this and this. And that's 100% because of the work that we did during the writing of the book. So, yeah.
Oh, I see. I was thinking of how it would help the players, but it sounds like it's helping storytellers too.
Sure, it does help the players because they have a ready reference that they can build effects from, and that's the 100% the intent of the book. But this additional bonus to me as a storyteller, I wasn't expecting, and it's come up every session where a player has gone, "Okay, so why is this working?" And I can explain it because we got right under the hood and looked at where all the wires go and how they connect to all the other wires.
Actually, for me, that is the main thing I absolutely adore about the system, is that a lot of people complain about the idiosyncrasies within the spheres, especially little things like why is it that life works that I can affect myself better than others, or why is mind so coincidental, little things like these. But they tell you a little bit about the underlying metaphysics of the system in ways that then you can actually take as a storyteller and make center stage into a part of the intrigue to essentially, I suppose, reach as close as Mage can get to a fundamental truth of the universe. And yes, there's going to be a lot of flexibility there, and I don't wish to suggest that there is only one way to understand the system of the setting. But you can take these little things that are like, why is it like that? And actually build a story around that or around the implications of that.
Yeah, lore that, like stories that arise out of those mechanics of that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, that does open up possibilities. Well, how long did this project take? Is that the wrong question?
Yeah, I guess we're both laughing. Well, you produced a whole human being during it, so...
I think, first of all, there was the first release of it, which I don't know how long that took, because that was before I was involved in it.
Yeah, that was a year, maybe, of just pulling bits together here and there, maybe.
And what essentially happened was I was wanting to work on something like this for a very long time, and I was kind of in the process of getting notes together when I saw it already manifest. And so, of course, I looked into it, and I noticed a lot of things which seemed like I wasn't quite certain about how the decisions were made, but also about there are a couple of things in there without being in any way rude, and were just flat out incorrect.
Yeah, stuff for like house rules that I just had accepted as normal for so long that I forgot they were. I mean,
And so essentially what I did was I contacted Mark, and I told him that this is something that I've been wanting to do for ages, and I want to make it better. Would you be open to that? And we kind of talked about what would be kind of a good way of doing it, because you said that you wanted to kind of like build on it as well.
Yeah.
We thought that it would take a few months and then we'd re-release, and it took over a year and a half of extra kind of like back and forth.
Yeah.
You guys did the heavy lifting, so we don't have to.
There were a good 3 or 4 rounds of development edits, and it did go through a very thorough review process between the two of us, actually. David's a researcher, I'm an editor, so those skills came in to play as well in the final phases quite strongly too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great to hear. What are your thoughts on Storyteller's Vault now that you have a book there?
I don't think my thoughts on the website itself are particularly different just because I now have something on it. I've seen the Vault as having a lot of good quality things on there that are usually trying to bridge the gaps of communication that the core books don't quite properly explain. I think the big ones being the ones usually explaining how do we square the whole of Paradigm and my kind of Mage's approach to magic, as well as books that offer setting information, which was only really kind of hinted at within the official material. So I've always thought that it was an incredibly good resource for people that wanted that stuff but didn't feel confident about making it up themselves.
I like how it's democratized, leveled, I suppose, the design playing field. You do get a lot of stuff that's not great, of course, Sturgeon's Law, but there are some real gems that have come out of it. It's great to see this product doing well enough to be on the bestseller list and be alongside other products that I think, well, okay, that's great. I'm really happy to be there, numbered alongside some of the top sellers in the within the Mage the Ascension section. Yeah, that's really lovely, and it's also a confirmation that we weren't off base. That a really pretty rules intensive, in depth look at the absolute bare bones building blocks of the system is needed and wanted. Yeah, so that's good to see as well.
Have you received any feedback from people who bought the book and tried it out?
Yeah, some good reviews. Yeah, it's got a 5-star rating. I mean, you know, I don't want to shield my own product to be somewhat gauche, but it has done well. Yeah, and the feedback has been good. And as David was part of it in the initial release, there was a rounds of quite correct critique of things that I'd missed or messed up on, or you know, the ways I could do it better. And I did a couple of early revisions. That was while we were working. Once we'd already gotten stuck into the main revision. So,
well, if someone was thinking about getting this book, what would you tell them?
I would say that it's a source that can be used in many different ways. One, it can be used as an introduction to the spheres, so similar to any of the core books. And if you simply want to understand the basics of what each sphere can do on its own, it's a useful tool for that. It can also be a tool for better considering rules on how to apply to specific effects, rather than the vagueness that the M20 table provides, or the over specificity that how do you do that kind of provides, if that makes sense. But it can also be used for people to think about how they have approached the effects themselves and decide whether or not what we have offered as a potential solution to some of these is a good way of doing it. Does it create implications that they don't like and they want to do it a different way, which is part of the reason why we've offered all of these. There are several ways to do this, and this is the decisions that we're making approach. But it can also be for a way for storytellers to also consider what implications there are with them utilizing the spheres, especially at the higher end, where I don't think a lot of people usually play as players in the 4th, 5th rank. They can possibly use as a setup for their storyteller characters, or for things which are now in the setting that the players will eventually have to just deal with.
Yeah, I think your first part I really strongly agree with, and this is more in the revised version we've just released than the original version. So if you bought the original version, thank you, and you've got a nice update here for free, which basically is that it does serve as a standalone guide to the spheres themselves. We put a lot of work into making sure that you can pick up this book and learn the sphere system from it. Not necessarily how to cast effects, that would require a larger work, so to speak. The actual how the spheres themselves work is very much self-contained within it. And the other thing that I would mention actually is there's a couple of places where we've stepped outside the rules. I've suggested an effect or two from Mage the Awakening, and we've suggested a couple of different ways to handle things based on our own assumptions. And these are called out clearly in the text, but it can also serve as a way for storytellers and players to see how they can step beyond what's already there.
I think the major kind of desire that we wanted here is to create a default to fall back on. So people can understand the reasoning behind why you would use one set of decisions for a particular effect. And so they can decide whether they like that or not, and if they do, what they would be able to do to build onto it, maybe taking things from Awakening, for example, while still maintaining a sort of internal consistency.
Well, I think this, more than how do you do that, will lead to creative thinking among players. You haven't sold me on using alternate spheres in my games, but now that I've seen your 3 chapters on them, I can consider them a legitimate option for games. Players will especially appreciate this. They don't have to look at the standard sphere and try to puzzle out how the alternate will differ. Now they look at a few pages, everything there needs no translation. Well, final question. I've spoken with some people who are Mage fans but feel intimidated to start running games. Can your book help them?
Yeah, sure. If I had to make a list of ideal customers, they'd be at the top, for sure.
I think that if the major reason you are hesitant about starting a game is because you don't know how to manage the actual magic of it, or what it is to kind of do when it comes to creating events or things or obstacles for your players, I believe the book can help on both parts. If the major thing that you need in order to start playing and feel confident about it is familiarity above anything else. And if you are familiar enough to just start putting things together, because what makes someone familiar enough to be confident will be different for each person. Some people feel like they need to read a lot of things. Other people will think, yeah, this is fine, I'll just go with it. But what the book does is it offers a very, I'm not sure if succinct is the right word, but perhaps a very kind of like self-contained source for one to obtain that familiarity And so if that's holding you back and you want that sense of familiarity, then it's fair. It's fair for you to kind of go into and adapt to your own needs, really.
Well, thank you, both of you, for taking the time to tell our listeners about your book. I look forward to hearing what Mage fans think on our Discord server. Any parting words before we wrap up?
Just to thank you again, Adam, for having us on the show. Always lovely to be on the podcast.
I thank you for allowing me. This is the first time I've spoken of such a thing, and I hope I have the opportunity to speak to a lot more people, even if it's not on a podcast.
Well, we should have more opportunities in the days ahead. Well, thank you, both of you. My two guests have joined me from Europe, so we're crossing the time zone to bring you more content, and we look forward to more in the future. I am sitting down today with Lee Webb, author of the Darkness Over Dallas fiction series. We've chatted on our Discord server, but this is the first time I can hear the full details about his Mage fiction. Lee Webb has the dubious honor of being the first person I interview with our new recording software. I want to give a big thanks to our executive producers who made it possible for us to use this software. Before I ask questions, Lee, can you give us an introduction to your fiction series?
Well, started out as a story about some Etherites having a car race, and after I published that in the Darkened Streets anthology, I had some ideas on how it could keep going, and then I had to figure out how to stop, which was a lot harder.
The 7th episode in The Darkness Over Dallas is our focus today because it will be out soon. I read the first story, Fireball Run. My initial thought was, how long is the author going to take to set things up? But the story got rolling quickly. The action was great. I really enjoyed it. When you were last on the show, you told us about Crushing Depths, where the protagonist takes a submarine to the Hollow Earth. After that came Checkpoint. The online description for Checkpoint doesn't explain very well what that story is about. It tells me the Etherites are in it and the Hollow Ones are in it, but just a brief description. What does the story focus on?
Focuses on the fallout of the previous several stories. We open up with two of the characters in a makeshift infirmary chatting with each other because one of them just woke up in a tub of rock salt and doesn't know what's happening. They had just passed out at the end of episode 4, and this was where we picked up from there. Then we move to getting the rest of the cast together and have what I've been referring to as the mother of all expositions, where everybody compares notes of what happened in the previous 5 stories.
Oh, okay. So this is important for gathering the threads together before we move on with the series. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, and then enchanted alligators attack.
Now I'm curious. Now I am curious now. I think I might pick this one up. Okay, well, tell us about your latest episode.
Episode 7 is Night Rangers. We're jumping away from the Etherites and the Hollow Ones, and we're seeing what the Technocracy is up to.
Now, you said Night Rangers, so the Technocracy, I guess they're like, I'm thinking of Texas Rangers, but I think this is probably different.
The Night Rangers is kind of a nickname for Division 13 of the Texas Rangers, which is a technocratic amalgam that is in charge of basically keeping operations safe and secure in Texas, particularly in Dallas, where there's a lot of progenitor and syndicate infrastructure in place.
Okay, so we're going to get some action this time. Okay.
Every episode has punching.
Well, you can't beat that. When will it be out?
Weeks, really. I'm waiting for the editor to finish the formatting and the final. I sent my final edit to him, and he may have some suggestions to tweak dialogue here and there. But as soon as that's done, we're going to be ready in days or weeks. I don't know which.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. We'll have to get the links out for your series on Storyteller's Vault so that people can follow that by the time this airs. That may be ready. Well, I heard a few years back the advice to fiction authors was to write a series rather than a single novel. Apparently, if what I'm hearing is right, readers like a running series they can get into rather than one great book. What was your thinking when you launched Darkness Over Dallas series?
I am a huge fan of Jim Butcher's Dresden Files. A lot of the urban fantasy I've been consuming has been serialized, and I've always loved comic books, and they come out monthly or bi-weekly, depending on how exhausted the writer is. And I kind of wanted to try my hand at that, and I've been having a really good experience with it.
The stories feature the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas. I was concerned I would need to catch up on area knowledge to get through Fireball Run, but that wasn't the case. What has focusing on one area done for your fiction?
Well, Dallas-Fort Worth is huge. There's 8 million people living around here. It's miles and miles of Texas that it occupies. If you've ever played Minecraft or World of Warcraft, you can travel a short way and find yourself in an entirely different biome. And so there's a lot of variety. You got hill country, you got suburban wastelands, you've got artificial lakes, lots of different things to work with.
That makes sense. So you can tell just about any sort of a story and have the characters near where the other characters are, so you can bring them together when you want to.
I'm really looking forward to doing something with White Rock Lake, which I've come to learn is the most haunted lake in North Texas.
So probably the Hollow Ones are going to be a part of that story.
Oh yes. I've got a necromancer hanging out with them named Sunder, and he's going to have a field day out there.
Well, I'm also in Texas, but a little south in Austin. I'm learning about areas south of me, but in Dallas, all I know is the Dallas Arboretum and Botanical Garden. I can't get enough of that place.
It's right next to White Rock Lake.
Oh, I didn't even know I was that close to the most haunted place in North Texas.
Oh, yeah. I went walking around it a few years back before I learned that fact.
Now, at one point, the Arboretum, it's on a shore. It's like right next to the lake then.
Yeah, you can see the lake I can see the Arboretum when I was walking around the lake.
Okay, you see, they don't tell you that in the Arboretum gift shop. I'm going to have to ask some questions next time I go down that way.
There's some really cool stuff. There's an old ruined bathhouse right by the lake. It's like falling apart, but people used to go out there, jump in the water, climb back out into the little pavilion area that's overhanging it. There's a bunch of really old buildings along the lakefront.
Well, I did want to hear just a little bit more about Night Rangers. I mean, you told us it involves the Texas Rangers. It's an amalgam of technocrats. Now, before in the stories, we've been reading about tradition mages and those who are comfortable being around tradition mages. Now, technocrats it's a different mage faction. They don't always get along so well. So is this technocrats shooting at Etherites, or are they working together?
They have their own problems going on right now. Like I said, there's 8 million people in Dallas, and there's way more night folk than even they know. And they're dealing with the similar problem that the Etherites are dealing with, which is somebody is messing with everyone. And no one's quite sure who it is because they're working through like a 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon cat's paw situation. It's hard to get a beat on somebody when you can't even see the hand that's moving the hand that's moving the hand.
Okay.
We've introduced the Night Rangers before. You run into them in episode 2. Winnie is a game warden. The Texas Rangers recruit from law enforcement in general, and game wardens are technically that. And I really enjoyed the idea that they have somebody who's like a cryptozoologist. She's a progenitor action scientist, and she goes out into the wild places and sees what's been chewing on stuff.
Okay. That's a nice way to put it. So it sounds like something's going on. The technocrats are going to come into the story, find out more about what's going on. And then later in the series, that common enemy will bring the two warring factions in the Ascension War together.
In a major way. I've got a lot of this pretty much mapped out by now. It took a little bit of time in the first 6 episodes to figure out how long this was going to be.
So that's one of the rewards of the longer series is you start to see the richness once you walk your way into it a bit.
Again, I was planning on doing one episode per of the surviving characters of Fireball 1. So Minerva was in episode 2. She and Winnie are the stars of that. And then Albert is the main star of episode 3. He has a little cyberspace adventure. And then I took a huge detour in episode 4 and did a Hollow One horror story. Episode 5, I got back to Dwight, and he went to the Hollow Earth to continue the investigation. And episode 6, they all got back together to compare notes.
We're 7 stories in, and I see the titles of 12 stories, these stories ahead that are planned. So did you have a master plan and you started in from the first story, or did you change directions after a couple of stories? I mean, how much of a plan was there when you started this?
I had a rough outline of what was going to happen. I just didn't know the particulars until episode 3 when I figured out like how long these were going to be. They've been 20 to 30,000 words since episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 1 and 2 are 10,000 and 15,000 words, and it's been averaging out to 20 to 30 ever since then.
Well, looking at the Storyteller's Vault, I see questions posted with answers and positive reviews. It looks like this has been a success for you. What were some of the responses you got from readers?
Well, one guy called me up and messaged me and wanted to talk about an idea that I gave him from reading Fireball Run. He had this crazy idea about a Mario Kart-esque game where you raced around the ruins of Duisatep. And we compared notes and brainstormed about that for a couple of hours, I think, and that was a lot of fun. I am a big believer in when you're coming up with really good ideas, you're throwing off sparks like hitting an anvil. I call them brain sparks, and they can give other people ideas. And I love giving other people ideas. I love inspiring other people to go off and creating their own stuff. I love that.
Well, has this had any effect on your Mage games?
I haven't had much time to play Mage games in the last few years. This has kind of been my surrogate for that.
Oh, okay.
The last Mage game I played, I ran Albert.
So you think if you get a chance in the days ahead, some of the material from this stories might find their way into your games?
Probably. I mean, when all of this is done, I'm going to take a lot of the material that I've come up with over the time. And I originally wanted to do a Dallas City book. And I'm going to have a lot more material to work with when it comes down to do that. I don't know if that'll be the last thing I ever publish on the Storyteller's Vault, but it's the last thing I have in mind.
Well, I think that gets to the end of my questions. Before we sign off, was there anything else you wanted to let us know about or anything I forgot to ask about?
Well, Night Rangers is coming out soon, and it is going to cover a big dust-up between a small group of Tremere and the Night Rangers when they run headlong into each other's conspiracy. We're going to get a peek behind the veil of what the vampires are up to in Dallas. We're going to get a peek behind the veil of how the technocrats operate in Dallas beyond the Night Rangers themselves. We're going to just kind of see what's going on out there. And part of what this is to establish and set the stakes for when everything starts blowing up in the last 3 chapters.
Well, that sounds like something to look forward to. Thanks for letting us know about it. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us today. Well, I certainly wish you success with that story, and we'll be able to talk about it more on the Mage Discord, and we'll put a link for our Discord server in the show notes for everyone out there listening, so you can probably come and join the conversations too. Well, thanks, Lee. Have a good day.
Absolutely. You have a great day too.